welcome back to another episode of the Stadium Showdown, your in-depth look at the future home of the Cleveland Browns. I'm Jeff Slauson. Going to start this week with the Department of Unclaimed Funds. Have you heard of it? Have you heard me say it a million times? Well, that's where we're going to begin right now, because the Department of Unclaimed Funds, as we have talked about many times, is in control of $1.7 billion that can go toward various projects across the state, including sports projects, including the Cleveland Browns. They requested $600 million. That was approved. It is currently being held up in the courts. So the natural next question, of course, when that all was announced, was always, could other teams in our area want to dig into this? Not to move, but for renovations. And it seems now that absolutely is the case. The Cavs and the Guardians have confirmed to us here at 19 News that they are putting in requests for grants through the Department of Unclaimed Funds money, basically, to try and get funding for their projects. Now, as of right now, or at least as of this recording, we do not know the specific amounts that they are requesting. But I want to show you what they say they're going to use it for. According to the Cavs, and we're going to read you a statement from them in just a second, the Cavs say that they are going to be using this for renovations and basic improvements to the stadium itself. They also say that this was kind of jump-started with the fact that they are going to be welcoming in a WNBA team in 2028, right? So 2 years from now, there's going to be a third team under one roof at Rocket Arena. So obviously, you need some sort of improvements. That's what they're hoping to do with this money from the state. Again, this is from the Department of Unclaimed Funds. This is money that is from Ohioans, ultimately was not used, and now belongs to the state. Let's go to the Guardians now. The Guardians, again, still don't know the amount, would use this toward their ongoing renovations, to bolster their ongoing renovations that they currently have in operation. Now, remember, that was like a $200 million project. Guardians are covering about $60 million of that, but this would just kind of help with those certain aspects of the project itself. Gateway is the kind of ownership of both lots from that. They would be the ones that, in partnership with those teams, would be putting in for those filings. Here's what's interesting about all of this, right? Typically, you would see this money come from the sin tax for the city. For those that are unfamiliar with the sin tax, that's things like alcohol, that's things like cigarettes, etc., right? An extra tax on that. Historically, for the past 20, 30 years, a portion of that has gone toward renovations for stadiums. And it's been split equally between the Browns, between the Cavs, and between the Guardians. On average, they're taking home somewhere close to $5 million each for a total of $15 million in that pool. The problem is the money's getting tighter. I was looking at Gateway Records. There was a recent video production project that was done for the Cleveland Cavaliers. That was more than $15 million. That's basically 3+ years of saving of that sin tax to just pay for one thing. So renovations, things like that, are becoming more and more expensive. So for these teams, they can't just rely on the sin tax. They have to go to something else. When it comes to the Department of Unclaimed Funds, again, it's still being held up. We're actually at an inflection point for them because due to increased media attention, due to people wanting their money more because it's been in the news more, they've actually been seeing a record number of people putting in requests. Let's listen.
As part of the new system, claimants can search their name, claim their money, upload their documents, and check the status of their claim, all on our site. In the last 6 months, we paid out over 100,000 claims, which is 4 times more than we did the previous year, and that's because of our new system.
Get to a couple of statements here. Let's start with the Cleveland Cavaliers. They said, and I quote, "Rock Entertainment Group, in partnership with our landlord Gateway, has submitted an application for the Ohio Sports Facility Performance Grant." Same grant we're talking about. As the largest driver of economic activity in Cuyahoga County and hosts to nearly 200 ticketed events every year, Rocket Arena is integral to the vitality and vibrancy of our city and community. The preservation and continued modernization of our 30-year-old venue are essential to sustaining and growing premier sports and entertainment in downtown Cleveland. This investment will ensure the arena's readiness to welcome the return of the WNBA to Cleveland in 2028, while serving as home to 3 professional franchises and supporting a full year-round sports and entertainment calendar. Also reached out, of course, to the Cleveland Guardians for comment on this. Their response was, and I quote, "We can confirm the Cleveland Guardians, in partnership with our landlord Gateway, have submitted an application for the Ohio Sports Facility Performance Grant. The grant program was established by the state of Ohio to support the construction or renovation of Ohio sports facilities like ours. Our grant application primarily focuses on pursuing supplemental support for the Progressive Field Preservation Project, which itself is based on a comprehensive third-party facility condition assessment completed in December of 2025. The Preservation Project provides a strategic roadmap for those projects necessary to preserve and modernize Progressive Field, Ohio's oldest major professional sports facility, for the remaining 11 years of the approved lease. Just one more statement to read out here. We also reached out to the city of Cleveland on this, and a very simple response. The city has made it clear that our focus is not using our own general fund to support stadium maintenance. That position has not changed. We will continue having discussions with the teams as this process plays out. So yeah, this is obviously a win for the city, and it's a win for these organizations. This is where it's mainly different, right? The Cavs and the Guardians, they're using this to bolster their presence in downtown Cleveland. The Browns use this to move, as a way to be able to move. So very much so a win-win for the parties that are staying physically in downtown Cleveland. But last thing I want to touch on here, remember, this money is tied up. The $600 million that is supposed to go to the Browns was supposed to happen on January 1st of 2026. That didn't happen because a judge stopped it. A judge is waiting to make a ruling on whether or not it is constitutional for the Department of Unclaimed Funds to have money that then goes to sports venues and things like that. It's basically the argument that Mark Dan, the former Attorney General here in the state of Ohio, is arguing is unlawful seizure of property, because it technically at one point was a person's property. So that's why it's interesting that the Department of Unclaimed Funds is seeing so many people give so much attention to this, and it's also interesting that now other sports organizations within Cleveland that potentially could see negative impacts from the Browns' move starting to use it. And I guess if you can't beat them, join them, so there makes absolute sense to want to do something with that funding. It's yet to be seen when we could potentially find out when that funding would go to those organizations, because again, if the $600 million is being held up from the Browns, you can assure that money that would go for the Cavs and the Guardians would still be held up as well. All right, coming up after a short break, we will have the latest from Brook Park. A lot to get through and a lot of updates from there for where they're going to, of course, have the new site. We will have that after a short break. Welcome back. Brook Park had their council meeting this week where, of course, the Browns were heavily addressed in this. Now, we're going to play a portion of the meeting to start here. A couple of things are covered. I want to just go through them step by step, and then I'll let you listen and obviously get your own opinion on it. First, they discussed that NOACA meeting that happened last week. That basically was to try and give a clearer lane, I guess you could say, for how the airport, different transportation areas would need to reconfigure to fit the stadium. The mayor talking heavily about how, while many people are still upset, despite all of the evidence that they have presented that this will have a minimal impact on non-game days, he wants to make sure that people are in agreement of this because of what this does provide. Now, I just want to point to you really quickly. I have my notes obviously listed here. Why the mayor is saying this is so important. Basically, the more people that are behind this, whether that be politicians or just regular people, the more availability there is to potentially get more grant funding, more things available as well for that area. He talked about how there are obviously people that are upset about this. However, the more studies that are done, the more things that are done to try and look into exactly what will and will not work at Brook Park, that's kind of the ideal situation for these folks, right? If you don't like what's happening, find out more information about whether or not that's actually going to succeed. So the NOACA meeting, very successful as far as what Brook Park believes they can do moving forward. So want to play for you right now a portion of the meeting this week. Again, a lot covered here, still much more that we are expecting from Brook Park as we get closer and closer to that grand opening.
Some good news from last Friday, February 13th. NOACA, which is the Northeast Ohio Area-Wide Coordinating Agency, their executive committee has moved our project for the 6 buildable units onto the March 13th meeting for the Board of Directors approval. And for those that are following from home and council, it's very important that we continually educate people on this wonderful project that we're doing here in the city of Brook Park. We are trying to become eligible for grant funding at the federal level and obviously at the state level. So this is a very important portion of this project. The funding, there's a return on that investment. And for all the council members that can be there, we would ask that you please show some support as we push this through to NOACA. It's a fantastic project, and I know there's some people that are concerned with some of the traffic, even without having any data. I would just say that if we can continue to work as a team to be able to keep pushing this project through, some of the folks that are basically saying that there may be some issues in other areas, if we do not push this phase of the project through, it will cause issues in the area. So it's completely imperative for us to work as a team. It is a very assured project. It is being reviewed by ODOT right now. It is being reviewed by NOACA. It has been passed through NOACA's PPR, their review process. And at times I think this is becoming a little political, as we all know. And for this area to be able to have somebody making an investment, private developers to make an investment this large, we do need to understand the impact that it's going to have. And as we are going through these different agencies, we're finding out that we are getting approval. So it's very important that we get on the long-range plan and on the TIP program from NOACA to become eligible. And for the residents that are paying attention at home, this is not just a money grab for grant money. There is a return on the investment. So as our different government levels appropriate dollars, Ohio has the track dollars, and as the federal government has billed grant dollars, those are appropriated for projects like this. As we make investments at a state level or a federal level, this is going to generate more money to be able to go back to Washington, to go back to Columbus. So we need to stick together and continue to work and educate the legislators or the representatives on these different committees so that they do understand the facts versus false narratives. And I'm saying this as polite as I possibly can.
Now, the mayor also mentioned how a lot of the things related to the Brown Stadium have become political, and he's hoping that that can slightly subside, of course, as they try and get more of these grants. Grants like we talked last week, the one that would come from the federal government that could help with some of the infrastructure changes. Now, in addition to Brook Park's meeting, they also sent out a line about a study that they're going to be conducting and asking for people basically to put their 2 cents in about the potential changes that are needed around the airport related to a new Brown Stadium. So take a look at what they showed here. This is what they posted onto their Facebook. So first is kind of this one sheet that talks about how they're looking to receive comments from people that are in the area, around the area, basically on this project that would help the Berea Freeway, so that's 237, that'd be from Sheldon Road to Eastland Road. This is a map of the area that I'll show you right now. If you look at it, you see on the left-hand side, that right there is Cleveland Hopkins International Airport. That entire area will see some sort of an impact as a result of the stadium. So obviously, the infrastructure changes for that spot, they need to be done. This right here, that's where the potential plot is, or that's where the actual plot is for the new stadium. So obviously, this is something that needs to be figured out. So if you want to have your voice heard here, and if you want to be able to give them the chance to at least explain what your problems are, this is the time to do it. I want to go through really quickly just the timeline on this. They're expecting construction to begin spring of 2027. It'll be 6 months long. So obviously you have time, but not a large amount of time here. If you want to submit a response no later than March 18th of 2026, that's what they're looking for as far as opening up the opportunity for people to understand what's going on and then offer, of course, their 2 cents. All right, and then the last thing with Brook Park that I want to touch on really quickly, I just want to show you this. This is from the budget for 2026. You can see that there's key points listed on the budget. What I want to point to is kind of halfway down here, right? So it shows you the income tax 2025, it shows you the 2026 expectations, then it shows this part. Does not include tax dollars related to the Browns as of the project is due to be reviewed under negotiation. What does that mean? Well, we reached out to Brook Park on this to get a little bit of clarification. Essentially, Brook Park, the Browns, the landowners, all of that, that still needs to be ironed out. So we do not know what the income tax is going to look like for 2026 until more of that information has become clear. So as of right now, we don't know how much anticipated, at least for the next year, it is going to be that the Browns site brings to Brook Park. I know what you're probably thinking. Wouldn't the answer be 0? Maybe. If the Browns have actual offices on site, which we're going to assume they potentially will, that'll change things. So obviously the negotiation there is what type of a site are you looking for? What type of a permanent site are you looking for? And then, yeah, of course, how much could Brook Park actually make as a result? I know we covered a lot here, but of course we got one more block to hit here. And coming up after the break, the Browns released some somewhat new and interesting information about the new stadium. It's nothing pressing, but it has to do with the food options. We will be sharing that with you after a quick break. Welcome back. The Cleveland Browns have announced their plans for the food provider, yes, the food provider for the new stadium here. Going to pull up just a quick one sheet to explain exactly what we're talking about here. So Legends Global, the current Huntington Bank Field hospitality manager, I guess is the best to say it, they will continue to do so at the new stadium. Just a couple of things here. So they're going to be the exclusive food and beverage provider for what they are calling the state-of-the-art venue. They say that they're going to manage all aspects of food and beverage. That's going to include concessions, suites, clubs, catering. They're going to use data-driven, fan-focused approach to make the menus. And then they say that they're going to use local and regional sourcing. This is interesting. So they're saying that they're going to use Northeast Ohio businesses, purveyors, and culinary partners to deliver fans the flavors that they want. So you potentially could expect some of your local favorites to be at the stadium. Think about any other stadium you go to right now, whether it's the Cavs or the Guardians, you have those local businesses that are selling stuff. It seems like that's going to be no different in this situation throughout the whole thing. Lastly, do you remember last week when we showed you some new renderings? Well, we have 2 new ones to show you here. First, I'm going to show you all 4 that the Browns released. You've seen these first 2, okay? Saw the overhead shot, right, of the whole thing from the interior. These are going to be the new ones here. Reason why I'm showing you this. The one, more so just the aesthetic, a different view of kind of what we've normally seen. The second kind of shows you a clearer view about something that I want to point to as a larger approach here. We heard last week from the developer that the plan is to make it a more open outlet to allow for easier ingress to and from certain areas. More open. So when you go to a concession stand, you feel more natural going to your seat or back into the concessions, however you want to play it. It's more flowy. It's less kind of separated. These two kind of new renderings show that even more, right? It shows you much more clearly the plan to try and make it so it's kind of an open, quote unquote, open floor plan. So that's what the latest renderings show with that. Of course, as we slowly approach the construction, we're expecting more of those renderings to become a little more finalized. And if you want to watch any of our previous coverage of the Stadium Showdown, go ahead, scan the QR code on your screen right now. That is the latest that we have related to every single piece of the Stadium Showdown. And thank you so much for watching our latest episode. Of course, we will see you coming up next week. Anytime there's any breaking updates as well, of course, head to the 19 News app. We post all of those to that link as well, that QR code that I showed you earlier. That's got every update. So anything that happens during the week leading into the show, before we break it down even further, that's the place to go for it. All right, thank you so much for watching. For now, I'm Jeff Slauson with 19 News. We will see everybody in a week. Have a great weekend.